Portions of the following program are pre-recorded.
Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Good morning. Welcome to Talk of the Town, Super Talk 1270. We're here this morning with a very special guest. We have Allison Malkowski, who is the Assistant Director at Dakota Zoo, with us this morning. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the things going on at the zoo. They've entered their off season, so things are a little bit different. But we're going to focus mostly throughout the hour on the penguin exhibit, because Allison's very involved in that. She's an intricate part of its development and the education and the experience involved in that. So I think we're going to have a great show. I'm really excited about it. So thanks for being here, Allison.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
First of all, let's talk a little bit about your background. You know, where you're from, how did you get into being a director at the zoo, and kind of your path?
Yeah, definitely. So this is my hometown, Bismarck Mandan area. So
nice.
I'm very fortunate to be doing this career in my hometown, because most people that go in the zoo field have to travel all over, kind of take whatever opportunities they can get. So I went to NDSU for fisheries and wildlife biology under their zoology major, and luckily did a internship at the zoo in Fargo while I was still in school, and that kind of got me hooked onto the zoo field. And so I worked there for 2.5 years until I graduated, and then I took a job at the zoo up in Minot. I helped them recover from the flood, so I literally took that job when they just had like a petting zoo. But I knew they were going to be fully recovering, and so it was exciting to be a part of that, help them recover from the devastating flood that they had at the time.
Yeah.
And then I worked a lot with their African hoofstock, was my main role there. And I was there for about 5.5 years. So worked a lot with giraffes. So, penguins, giraffes, a little bit different, but I have kind of always found myself ending up in Africa in one way or another. And then I came down here. Terry asked me to be a part of the zoo, and, I was kind of ready for that next step. So here I am.
Wow. We're lucky to have you. So you've been with Dakota Zoo for how long now?
Just about 6 years.
Oh, wow. And explain a little bit about, because you were here before the penguin exhibit existed, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So explain a little bit about that process, how we got, it's a great exhibit, by the way.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the region's real draws. I get in behind the scenes a little bit so I can see what goes on. It's a fabulous exhibit.
Yeah, the origin story, many years before, even maybe 10 years before, a survey had gone out to the public gauging what they wanted to see. So the zoo was looking to do the capital campaign. Back then, they wanted to do something that was both public interest as well as a good conservation story, which is how penguins came to be. So a survey had gone out, and I even remember my parents getting it because I was from here, but I wasn't currently here. And it was like, had the red pandas, meerkats, penguins, and penguins was the number one request from the community. And the zoo has always been, a big part of the community, and has had a lot of good support from the community. So I think it's great that they got to kind of be a part of that choosing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think our community really, really supports our zoo. So do you think that the development of the penguin and that being kind of the number one ask was a byproduct of what Minot was doing?
I don't think so. I think it was kind of separate from that. The penguin population in accredited zoos is very robust, which is a good thing because the wild population is suffering so much. And so I think it was important that the zoo was isolating a strong conservation pull. It was nice to see that Minot has them and kind of get a little bit of experience that way. But ultimately, the conservation tie was, I think, the big message there.
And I'm assuming your experience with penguins in Minot was instrumental in helping you with the development.
Yep. I had none of our staff had worked with penguins before. So when we were doing that exhibit build, we had that under wraps pretty good, how to build and what kind of space we wanted to see. But when it came to actually, okay, we're going to have these penguins, I had been the only one that had worked with them. So that was helpful to kind of give us a little bit of a base. I didn't work with this size of a colony that we have now, so it's still been some learning. But we were able to send staff to various locations, including Minot, to get some training and real experience before our colony built.
So we build the building. It's ready to be populated. What transpires then? How do we receive these little penguins, because they're not big? So what does that process look like?
Yeah, so there's a nice robust penguin population in AZA zoos in North America, but it's not every day that a brand new exhibit opens up. A lot of exhibits around the country have been established for a long time, those habitats in place, those colonies in place. So when it comes to having a new habitat open up, we're getting penguins from all over the country. They don't just come in bulk from one place. So we had 2 from Arizona and 2 from San Diego and 2 from Florida and 2 from Memphis, all around to build this colony. And it took us 2 years, I think, to really build our core colony. So the people that kind of manage those penguins established, that we'd be taking about 18. We kind of said how much how many penguins our habitat could hold, and then they made recommendations across the country of which ones to form our base colony. And
you really don't have a say in what comes to you, because the Survival Species Program, correct?
Yep.
Their SSP.
Yeah, so we can kind of say we do want to help with breeding or not. So there's kind of those options, but otherwise we're kind of, at what's best for the group. No zoo is really working independently, because when it comes to saving species, we all have to work together.
Yeah. So your staff's running all over the country, gathering up penguins, or
Sure.
Or are they shipped? Are they flown?
Yeah, it was a little bit of everything. We had a lot of them were flown. Some of them were car rides, whether our staff met halfway or someone drove them up kind of all the way. But some of them came to Minneapolis Airport and we had to go get them. Some of them came directly to Bismarck. Some we had to meet and drive. So it was a little bit of everything to get the penguins here.
Oh, very interesting. So we'll wrap up this session. When we get into the next session, I'd like to talk a little bit more about the species in particular, the kinds of penguins that the zoo houses, the challenges that are involved with that. This is Kevin Oberlander with Talk of the Town's Super Talk 1270. We'll be back in a minute.
Super Talk 1270. Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270. This is Kevin Oberlander with Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, and Dakota Precision Compounding Labs. Our guest this morning is Allison Malkowski. She's the Assistant Director at Dakota Zoo, and one of the intricate curators of the penguin exhibit. Let's talk a little bit about the penguins themselves. The penguins in our exhibit, they're little guys. They're African penguins.
Correct.
Penguins are birds, correct?
Correct.
So tell me a little bit about them, their challenges in the wild, the conservation efforts, and some of the things that surround the need for an exhibit like this.
Yeah, so African penguins is the species that we have at the zoo. There are many different kinds of penguin species. Most people think about emperor penguins because they've had the most probably face in media and movies.
And they're big.
And they're 4 or 5 times the size sometimes. And so we've got the African penguins. So a lot of people go, well, we're in North Dakota. So obviously we have penguins from Antarctica, which is incorrect because these are, like its name states, from Africa. They're also known as the black-footed penguin. So that's kind of another thing. And they're found on the Cape of Africa. All penguins are found in south of the equator in the southern hemisphere, all the different species ranging from South America, Africa, and obviously Antarctica. So
they're not really a cold weather species.
Yeah, so correct. And that's why I think a lot of people think that they are, just because North Dakota, we're known for our winters. But the reason this species was chosen was because of the conservation tie and the plight of these birds specifically.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about the survival of the species, the challenges that they face in the wild, and why this is such an important thing to be part of.
Yeah, so this population of birds once numbered in the millions, we're at the last 1% of the entire history of this species,
wow,
which is crazy. The last survey I think they did just this last year in 2023 indicated only 10,000 breeding pairs. And that number is declining. It's not even holding steady at this point. And so, that's the big tie is, we risk losing this species altogether, in the wild in the next 20 to 30 years, even if we can't turn stuff around.
That is crazy. So what are their challenges in the wild? I know there was, I believe, at one of the annual meetings, didn't we have a penguin expert talk about some of the fishing patterns and some of the challenges of, chicks being fed and the access to food? Yeah.
There's a kind of a couple of things. The historic major, I think, introduction to the decline was penguins typically nest in kind of guano, fecal, built up on the sands over years. So it kind of creates this calcified sand that they dig out cavities to have their nests in, and that protects them from the sun. It protects them from the heat. And many years ago, we harvested that for fertilizer, and we basically decimated the habitat as humans, selling that. And so that was one of the early, turning points for this species, was destruction of habitat. In more recent years, it's been a fight for overfishing has been taking fish further away and changing the course of the fish in their natural areas. So penguins are having to travel farther. So in addition to baking in the sun and needing to go further to hunt for their fish, it's been very hard for the species. One of the things about the habitat loss is because they aren't as protected with their nesting sites, they're baking in the hot sun, and essentially a parent has to decide whether to potentially starve or overheat or abandon its chick. And so that's what's happening. They need to go out further to hunt. The chicks are baking in the sun. The adults are baking in the sun. And so there's some projects that are combating that, which we can talk about too. But those are kind of the two big things. We still have oil spills, of course, just traffic and human encroachment. But the biggest things are the fishing now.
So do they migrate at all, or are they pretty much...
They're pretty much where they're at in their colonies. Some of them are on islands. Some of them are on the Cape of Africa down there. But they kind of stay where they're at, and they have to just move for fish. Some of them are now trying to move because of the fish. There's no, they're trying to relocate, and humans are helping them try to relocate too. But, they pretty much stay.
If they don't have food, they're probably going to go try to find it.
Figure out how to survive.
Yeah. So in a situation like ours, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the breeding that's happened. Is there any introductory back to the wild from zoo-raised species, or how does that work?
Most of the zoo-raised species right now are not being released back out in Africa. However, we do have in zoos a population that is genetically diverse enough to survive for 100 years. So that's kind of the goal of those species survival plans that you kind of mentioned earlier, as we want to make sure there's good genetic diversity and that we have an assurance population if they were to go extinct in the wild. What's nice about having that is that if down the road we can restore habitat, then we do have hope for that. But that's the big kicker, right? Is any of our zoo programs where we have a good, robust population that would be healthy enough to reintroduce. It really all stems from, do we have the space and the appropriate habitat that's protected enough to do so? And so we're not releasing out, but a lot of zoos are working with people over in Africa to help slow what's happening there and make sure that there's a lot of rescue and release going on in Africa.
So what kind of decisions does SSP make that affect how you guys operate at the zoo?
The biggest thing is kind of controlling our colony, making sure that we're staying in a good, healthy colony parameter for our space, and all of the zoos. They're managing those genetics, so they recommend which penguins can breed and probably shouldn't based on genes. We don't want inbreeding. We want to make sure there's a lot of genetic diversity, because when you have diversity, you have longer-term survival versus like bottlenecked genes that cause diseases and other things.
And they're really involved in saying who comes. So we started out with males, I believe.
Yep, we started with our males.
And then introduced the females. So they're very involved in deciding who from that population that's coming, that's really their decision.
Yep, and they're keeping track of all the genetic lines to make sure that we know every penguin on an individual basis.
And then you have some exciting news that we'll bring up in the next session about going to Africa very soon on a conservation trip. So that'll be really cool. This is Super Talk 1270. Thanks for being with us this morning. We'll be back shortly.
Super Talk 1270. Talk of the town on Super Talk 1270.
This is Super Talk 1270. I'm Kevin Oberlander with Dakota Pharmacy, and our guest again this morning is Allison Malkowski, the Assistant Director at Dakota Zoo, very involved in the care and creating the experience and the education at the penguin exhibit. She's embarking on a 3-week trip to South Africa that we just discussed. I think that's just a fabulous opportunity for yourself. And to bring back that knowledge for our community. Let's refocus back on to our exhibit and our population. You said there's 18 penguins. Is it an even 9-9 male-female match? Or?
Yeah, I think we're actually, the original collie was 18. We had lost one last year, so we might be at 17. And then we had our baby Ruby last year. So 17 or 19 is where we're at, and it's not even right now.
Okay.
So, which is okay, because naturally it'd be all over the place.
Sure. So, do they team up for life partners, or?
Yeah.
How does that work?
How does that work? They usually, everyone's like birds mate for life. There are a lot of species that are stronger in that sentiment than others. We do see some really strong bonds in our colony, but just like real life relationships, sometimes they break up and get messy too. So we've got some penguins that are very devoted, and then we've got some penguins that are a little bit, we have to kind of help, get some pairings going for our recommended pairs, and we have drama of leaving and coming back and all of that.
So does SSP make recommendations on pairing?
Yeah, so essentially we have like one designated breeding pair currently that they are like, hey, these are the ones that we would love for you to produce eggs and raise chicks from. The rest, maybe genetically or for whatever reason, isn't as valuable to the whole the whole group in the country. And so those ones can just pair up and do whatever they want, but that we have a specific pair that we do need to make sure stay together, and we have to actually work at making sure they stay together.
Sure. And you did say you've already experienced the birth of a chick.
Yep, so that last winter, yep.
And just the one?
Yep, we had our first successful hatching since we've had our colony, which, we've only had the full colony for a year or so, with the females and the males. And so we hatched our first chick, Ruby, this last spring. And so that was our first successful chick of hopefully one of many to come.
So will she remain in the colony, or will she move on? Yeah,
she'll probably remain in the colony, which there are males that she could bond with at some point. But just kind of depending on nationally what that whole group of penguin needs. But we are set up to be able to keep offspring with us. But at some point, if we keep having offspring, they would get paired up and sent to other facilities. And because the population is so robust in AZA zoos, which is the silver lining of the conservation story, they don't need everybody to breed. So she might get to pick her mate, or she might be assigned to someone. It kind of depends.
Okay. And then, so any opportunities in the future for continuing breeding? Yeah.
So, the breeding season, we try to match, even though we're in North America, we're not in Africa, we still try to match the natural breeding season. So we're actually in that now. We're usually put out in the nest boxes, make sure the pairs are getting opportunities for nesting come September, and then we do that until about April. And then come April, we pull all the boxes and kind of get back to our normal colony.
So any risk in them maybe imprinting themselves with humans? Because you're very involved with them on a day-to-day basis. Do they gravitate toward certain staff? And is that a risk?
They have such dynamic personalities. So we do encourage them to be very close with staff, especially like for Ruby, for instance. Usually at a certain point, we finish their rearing through staff versus the parents. So the parents do all the heavy lifting in the beginning. They raise a chick through most of it, and then we take over at the end, because these penguins are in human care and we want them to thrive. And so that means receiving food from humans, and that means receiving medical care from humans. And so we don't want them to shy away. And they are really so dynamic and people love them. So there's a great education component to penguins that are used to being around humans. And so we do encourage it, but we do have some penguins that even though they might have been hand-raised or partially hand-raised, they are kind of very feisty and very standoffish. So it kind of depends. And there's certain penguins that like certain people. So one penguin might like one keeper and one might like the other.
It's a great segue into the behind-the-scenes experience that we'll touch on in a minute. But they all have names.
Yep, they all have names, and they're on their bands.
Do they recognize their names? Do you?
Yeah, some of them I think do. Like Ruby recognizes, the commotion when we're trying to call her over. And she's been used to that for her whole time. You know, we help these chicks, like once we're trying to integrate them back into the colony from being with their parents and then kind of being off behind the scenes. We do a lot of like swimming with them, like we're wading in the pools and helping them learn how to swim and be successful getting in and out.
Swimming lessons.
And then we help encourage them to get back into the colony. And so we are pretty involved with a lot of those steps to make sure that they're going to be comfortable and thrive in human care.
So just quickly touch on the medical part of it. I believe because they're birds, the bird flu issues that we've had around have affected you and prohibited some outside activity, correct?
Yeah, so we haven't lost anybody to the bird flu, thank goodness, but it is a concern. Penguins are just very sensitive because they're small. So even stuff like we worry about malaria, and we work with you guys to get the special meds for that. And so we have to be extra careful. So when bird flu was kind of at its peaks and when we see it kind of wax and wane, we limit the penguins being outside, a lot of the organic matter that would come from the outside in.
Because there's wild birds that enter the zoo at any point in time.
And that's what's nice about our exhibit, and I think was really great forethought, on Terry's part, was making sure that the main part of the exhibit was the indoor part. Sure.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the encounters that are an opportunity for the public to get really involved, get more behind the scenes. I had the fortunate opportunity to be a guinea pig for when the program started. So I got to get into the exhibit, some exposure to the penguin population behind the scenes. More with Allison from Dakota Zoo when we come back on Super Talk 1270.
Talk of the Town, weekday mornings starting at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app.
Now you can listen to Super Talk 1270 on Alexa.
Hiya.
Find out how at supertalk1270.com.
Goodbye.
Portions of the following program are pre-recorded.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
This is Kevin Oberlander with Dakota Pharmacy. Our guest Allison Malkowski from Dakota Zoo. And this is Super Talk 1270. And we're going to continue our conversation about penguins. What's that called? What's that experience look like? And is it continue now during your off season?
Yeah, so we have our Wild Encounters program, which we just developed in the last year, so it's still fairly new. And one of the 3 encounters that we offer is with the penguins, where people get to go behind the scenes, see our kitchen, see our back of house, and kind of just really get into how we care for the penguins and maybe even get to meet one. So,
and a photo op.
Yeah, and a photo opportunity. And so it's been a really fun program. People are very interested in what we're doing and how we're doing it. We are in the winter season, but we still offer that tour year round because the penguins are inside, and so we can still offer it. The best part about doing the tour actually in the off season rather than summer is you get to see what we do for nesting season. So we have birds in the back on nests where you wouldn't see that in the summer. And with that comes potentially the opportunity to see a chick in our nursery area in the back.
Which would be different than the opportunity that I had because I believe that was during the summer. So we'll probably have to do it again. Yeah. So in the off season or the winter hours, when is that offered?
Yep. So in the summer, it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday at 1:30, and you have to fill that slot. And in the winter, we still do Saturdays and Sundays at 1:30.
So people would call the zoo to schedule their encounters.
Yep.
Do you do more than one a day on the days you're doing
we only
them?
do one a day just because of like the needs of the animals and the time. And so it has to be registered in advance. We prefer at least a week notice so we can plan appropriately with staff. And then you pre-register up to 6 people can be in that tour. So whether you book out the whole tour or you just book a spot for 2, knowing that there might be some other people with you. But yeah.
Any age restrictions?
For the penguin one, I believe it's 6 years old for that one.
Okay. And then what are the other 2, just quickly?
Yeah, we have our North American one that focuses on like elk and bear. Bear's the big draw for that one. We also do a lot of raptor rehabilitation information and seeing our vet clinic in that one. And then the other one is our otter.
So I was a guinea pig for both of those as well, and they're wonderful experiences.
Yeah.
I would encourage anybody who has an interest to give the zoo a call and take that opportunity. So what other challenges as a zoo do you see in the preservation of your penguin population?
Yeah, right now we're really navigating the nesting season. This is only the second nesting season we're entering in with the eggs, and so that's just its own ball game. Is the eggs it involves candling them and weighing them on a weekly basis, making sure the nesting sites stay clean, and we're rotating all of that appropriately, and then making sure that the parents are doing their job well, so that we don't have to step in. And so that's really fun to just be a part of that, but it's been a learning curve for our staff.
So what's the parent's job?
So they're
sitting on the egg?
Sitting on the egg. But I had mentioned we had lost a penguin recently. They were sitting on an egg together. So we have a single dad. And he's been doing a good job, but it just takes an extra monitoring, for our single penguin parent. And then we've got another parent set that are sitting on an egg as well. And
that's happening now?
Yep. And that's happening now. And then we also, which is, we could talk for another whole session probably about this, but we have another pair that we have pulled to the back that can act as a foster pair. If either one are not doing their parental jobs well, not sitting on the egg appropriately, we can actually transfer that egg to a foster pair. And lots of zoos across the country have both just regular parents and foster parents raising eggs and chicks.
So what are the monitoring parameters that you look at?
We're really looking at that there's appropriate weight loss in the egg. So as the egg develops, it should be losing some weight as the chick grows. And so we're monitoring that, it's developing appropriately. When we candle it, we can physically see if the egg is viable within the first week. And then we see the chick develop and move. And we're looking for that movement of the chick to ensure it's growing.
Temperature?
Yeah, we don't take the temperature, but we physically feel if the egg is warm or not.
Sure. So no risk in handling the eggs and the parents rejecting it because there's been a human interaction?
Yeah, that's kind of the benefit of having them being used to humans, but we're all gloved up and we have this whole process of how we do the things, and it's been great to learn, and yeah, it's been fun though for our staff as well.
Cool. So anything else that you can share, or we're coming right up to the end?
Yeah, we have every day, if you come to the zoo when we're open, we have the public penguin feed. So you can come and see the penguins get fed. You might not see our behind the scenes nesting stuff from the main exhibit unless you do the behind the scenes tour, but you can be right up close and watch them eat.
And the keepers wear a headset.
Yep, and they kind of talk through that.
Give some education on that.
Yeah.
What do penguins eat?
Lots of fish. So much fish. We actually have to order, herring is only caught once a year. So we order a whole year's worth of fish at a time for the penguins. And we have a very big freezer because
I'll bet you do.
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to watch penguins eat. I'm amazed at how much they can eat.
Yeah, it's a big fish and they just swallow it whole. Yeah.
And a bunch of them.
Yeah. Yep.
So what happens when a penguin, how do you identify that a penguin is ill or suffering in some way, shape, or form, and what's the process?
Yeah, usually they stop eating. That's one of the big things. It's okay to miss a meal, but if they're missing a couple in a row, it's a big red flag. Isolating itself from the colony, kind of more lethargic, laying down, are all signs. But penguins are so stoic, so if you're seeing signs, sometimes it means they've been sick for a little while because they hide it really well.
I bet there's a real learning curve for the vet that helps the zoo as well.
Yeah, we've actually we've had to consult, which is what's nice about being in the zoo community is we consult with other zoos and other vets around the country. So as a whole, we have a ton of expertise, and there's always someone we can reach out to.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Allison. That was great information. Yeah. Again, a couple points of interest is the exhibit itself, the encounters, the behind-the-scenes tours that the public has access to. So if you're interested, I'd certainly look into that. I also want to mention the Conservation Fund again.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a little surprised at how successful it is.
Yeah.
But I know the work that's done at the zoo very well. And the Conservation Fund is a really, really great program.
Yeah.
So really consider, because part of the admission goes to that fund as well.
Part of admission and memberships, but people also just donate to the fund.
Sure. So really consider supporting that Conservation Fund. Just think about where those dollars go and the effect that it has on a population like our penguins. Thanks for being here, Allison. That was a great show. Have a great trip to South Africa.
Thank you.
And we're going to bring you back after that to find
definitely.
what that's all about. This is Super Talk 1270, Kevin Oberlander with Dakota Pharmacy. Look at the Dakota Zoo's website.
Yep.
dakotazoo.org.
Yep.
And again, a lot of information on our website as well. Check out our Serenity University, some educational tools that we continue to add to at dakotarx.com. This is Kevin Oberlander, pharmacist at Dakota Pharmacy with Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270.
Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Welcome back to Super Talk 1270's Talk of the Town. My name is Jason Spees. One more segment here as we talk Measure 5, the cannabis. I was going to say medicinal marijuana, but this is full-on rec, folks. You can go and have one and relax, put in Dark Side of the Moon, and put on The Wizard of Oz. When that second MGM Lion roars, you go ahead and hit play on that Pink Floyd album and watch how it syncs up. By the way, purely a coincidence. Roger Waters himself said that that's not actually, they didn't plan that. The Dark Side of the Moon and the Wizard of Oz synchronization. But if you ever see it, it's crazy how much it syncs up. But anyway, we'll talk about that another day, folks. Let's bring in Mark Fries here from Vogel Law, continue the conversation.
If somebody is traveling across state lines, Fargo-Moorhead, Wahpeton, Breckenridge, East Grand Forks, I mean, we can go to the south or go to the west side of the state and Beach, Montana, Beach, North Dakota and Glendive, Montana. What's the law say on that if you're in a neighboring state? I know that if somebody's going to drive a few ounces from Colorado to North Dakota, they're in trouble. They're going to be in trouble for that. Does the law say anything about that, or is that just, hey, man, you better stay in the state?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Jason. Unless you have medical authorization and you're possessing within that authorization limit, you're not able to bring marijuana from Minnesota into North Dakota. And if you have no medical authorization and you go into Minnesota, and bring marijuana back here, you're committing a crime, right? So it's very important that people understand this is not going to open up the door to allow people to come and go and take marijuana across the border and transport it all around. It's not doing that at all, right? The law of the jurisdiction in which you're passing through is going to control whether you can possess it or not, and whether you have that medical authorization is going to influence whether you're able to possess it as well.
I'm not sure if you can answer this or not, but there are a lot of legalese still that is being ironed out. Back in 2015, the Bakken oil fields out in western North Dakota went through a downturn, and I had a media brand, still do, called The Crude Life. I had to figure out some new revenue streams, so I tried to do some media work, some writing for the healthcare industry, the drone UAS industry, and I put out some feelers in the cannabis industry as well, just because I saw the emergence of it. And what I found out was the drone UAS industry was very controlled. And then I found out the healthcare industry was extremely controlled as far as trying to get your inwards there. The cannabis industry allowed me to write some articles. So I did a political election guide overview. I wrote a couple articles for about 3 different national cannabis publications, High Times, Marijuana Venture magazine. So I interviewed the very first dispensary in the United States, Choice Organics in Fort Collins, Colorado. I interviewed the very first transfer of a medicinal dispensary to a recreational in Colorado as well, Smokies. And then I talked to somebody who had the first approval from the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, to allow electronic currency. Now, that's a big deal right there, because we're talking about, the federal laws involved here. In North Dakota, are you going to be able to use your debit card, or are you going to have to use the ATM? How's the money exchange going to work?
A lot of that's going to depend on what happens at the federal level. You may be aware that the federal government is currently proposing a reclassification of marijuana from cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. And to kind of explain that to your listeners, Jason, Schedule 1, the federal government and all states classify controlled substances into schedules. Schedule 1 controlled substances are those that have a high potential for abuse with no accepted medical use. This is typically things that you'll see like LSD, MDMA, really, really hard drugs. Marijuana has historically been classified as a Schedule 1 controlled substance. And anyone with any modicum of honesty is going to tell you that's been wrong, because you know personally how marijuana has helped you with your medical needs, and thousands of people across the country do as well. So there's currently a movement afoot to reclassify marijuana as a Schedule 3 controlled substance. That's one that doesn't have much of a potential for abuse. It does have, scientific and medical purposes that can be used. If that happens, the restrictions on the money, the banks, those types of things will be revised. But if the federal government doesn't revise the scheduling under federal law, there are still going to be the impediments that we've been dealing with some of the medicinal program, and some of the other states all of the other states that have legalized adult use have been dealing with.
So when I think of the gateway drug, I've actually heard 2 different versions of the gateway drug. One is if you smoke cannabis, you're going to go to other drugs. You're going to search for something harder and harder and harder. The other gateway drug I've heard is that when you go to your dealer, they're the ones that gateway you to the other. Oh, you like that? Well, here, try these pills. Here, try this heroin. Here, try this, try that. So there's 2 different versions of gateway drugs, I guess, that I've heard through my lifetime. In your law enforcement days, what was gateway drug to you?
Well, it was kind of the first one. If you experiment with this, you're going to try other things. But I would say the flip side of the coin is one that we need to look at in more detail, right? I have lost a number of clients. I have fellow classmates of my own children who have died from fentanyl overdoses. These are profound and real impacts in communities across the state. And the reality is, I think a lot of those deaths would not have occurred if there was an ability for adult use cannabis for people who were experimenting with those things. Focus our efforts, our law enforcement efforts, on those hard drugs that are killing our kids, and regulate marijuana so that their kids can't get to it. And if you're 21 or older, you have that availability. Some of the other opposition, Jason, that we hear is traffic safety, access by children. Those are all real concerns, but this measure incorporates protections to address those concerns. I don't want 18, 19, 20-year-old young adults using marijuana. I don't want kids using marijuana. They won't be permitted to under this. I don't want people driving while impaired. They won't be permitted to under this, right? So, people who use alcohol, you're one of them, right? You just mentioned you hadn't consumed alcohol in like 4 years. People who would otherwise consume alcohol and get behind the wheel no longer consume alcohol, right? So this isn't like we're going to drop a social experiment and see how it works. The states that have been doing this have been doing it a long time. And it's no surprise that not a single state which has adopted an adult use cannabis law has repealed it.
Thank you, Mark Freese. We're out of time. Steve Bakken is back in just a moment or two. My name is Jason Spees, and this is Super Talk 1270's Talk of the Town.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken, and September 8th, Sunday, Out of the Darkness Walk, suicide prevention, all part of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Of course, the crisis line, always out there. If you need help, you know somebody that needs help, 988. It's pretty simple. There's even a line associated with that for veterans, because, of course, that's a huge concern in this country, and the number of veterans that need help. Crisis text line as well. You can text TALK to 741-741. Join us on the program, Dr. Brian Gale. And Brian, you've been involved with this for a long time. Of course, personal tragedy. One of the things with suicide is it affects a lot of people. I kind of equate it a little bit to cancer. If it's not somebody directly you're related to in the family, you know somebody or know somebody that's been affected by suicide. It's just, unfortunately, that prevalent. And that brings us to the Out of the Darkness Walk. Brian, thanks for coming on. And how long have you been involved with this? Because you were kind of the ground zero a little bit.
Well, the walk itself, Steve, and by the way, thanks for having us on. We really appreciate it. Walk itself kind of started in Fargo probably about 20 years ago. And then it's gradually grown over the years, and it's still really, really growing to many places around the state. It kind of has gone west. Bismarck, about 15 years ago, I've probably been involved with the walk about that long, got much more involved over the past maybe 10 years, and then now over the past 5 years, I'm actually on the chapter. It's called the Board for North Dakota. That Sam is, of course, the director of the state of North Dakota. So I help out. It's good for me. Makes me feel good. And when you think about suicide, you think about, well, it's something that you really don't want to talk about, but at the same time, if you do talk about it, it makes you feel better.
You know, that's hence the name, the Out of the Darkness Walk. It's about pulling it out of the darkness, out of the closet, so to speak, and bringing it out into the light of day, so that the mental health side, where you really don't know a lot of people that you expect that would be in a position like that. But when you take a look at the numbers across the state of North Dakota and across the country, it's sizable. I mean, it's a crisis. It's a problem that you have to have the conversation and bring it out in the light of day before you can start fixing it. With you on the board and participating in this, what are some of the things that you're seeing? Because, one of the things that people always ask about are metrics. It's like, am I making a difference? And really, I mean, you go back to the development of the 988 number and the text number, and there is a difference being made. The Out of the Darkness Walk and people's involvement and being able to speak about it in public, it is making a difference.
Yeah, that's right. So the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Sam might have mentioned this, it's the largest nonprofit for suicide prevention, but there's a lot of different nonprofits around the country that are involved with suicide prevention. There's a lot of research on the website. We do something called the Research Connection, where we actually have speakers come to our meetings a couple times a year to explain to us where they do all these specialty research projects. And there's no doubt that one of the reasons why one of the sayings and many of the talks start with "talk saves lives," because it's exactly what you said. There's this stigma about not talking about suicide, and if we talk about it, it saves lives. And we know that it does because there's statistics showing that it does. I don't have them in front of me, but we know that suicide is, for example, the third largest cause of death among certain age groups in North Dakota and around the country. And once again, these programs are set up specifically because science has shown us, research has shown us that if we talk about it with people, that it prevents suicide. One of the biggest things that when we take these workshops for a couple days and we get trained by these people that go around the country doing these training sessions is such a simple thing. Think about somebody that knocks on your door and they meant to go to the door next door. But at that time there was somebody on the other side of that door that was contemplating taking their lives. And so it's that interruption sometimes that can save someone's life. So we have to talk to people, and we have to ask our family members and our friends and our coworkers if they're okay, and try to start that discussion. And part of our recent workshop that we went to was literally we spend a lot of time just learning how to ask someone if they're thinking about taking their own life. So that it's a big deal. It works, and it's very important for us to spread the word and get more people involved.
Sunday, September 8th, we want to get a lot of people involved. The Out of the Darkness Walk up at the Capitol grounds. What do people expect? This is an event that's been growing year after year after year, and you've gotten me involved 6-7 years ago now, I believe. And I watch this grow every year. What do people expect when they show up at the Capitol this season?
So we expect there to be over 1,000 people there. We want more. In Fargo, it's up to about 2,000 people. The smaller areas around North Dakota get anywhere from a couple hundred on up, depending on how well it's run and how big it is, how long it's been going on. There's food, there's entertainment, there's speakers. There are people that are giving their story. I spoke once a couple years ago about the loss of my father when I was 9 years old, and it's a great place to talk and meet people, and just I don't know. When I talk about it, whether it's talking to you or it's talking to a group. I feel like I'm doing something to help people, but I'm also doing something to help myself. And so although there are people that, cry because it's such an emotional thing, they also know that they're helping themselves and they're helping other people. And so we're always looking for volunteers. You can go to the website, afsp.org/Bismarck. And all the information is there. It does not cost anything to register. You can walk virtually. We would love to have people show up. Almost everyone that I talk to has some kind of connection with suicide. Losing somebody close, losing somebody from school, losing somebody from work. And so we want to get out of the darkness. We want to talk about it. We want to appreciate the lives that we have, and we want to prevent suicide.
Make sure to check out the website, afsp.org. Volunteers, if you want to walk, if you want to help fundraise, Out of the Darkness Walk, kicking off at noon at the Capitol Grounds, September 8th. That's Sunday, and, of course, dog-friendly. So if you want to go walk your dog, you can always do that as well. Brian, thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Out of the Darkness Walk, and don't forget, always, if you're in crisis or you know somebody in crisis, you can dial 988, or you can text TALK to 741-741. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken, and joining us in the program, Kylie Harmon with Gaia Home. A big event coming up. Kylie, thanks for coming in this morning.
Thank you so very much for having me again.
Quick little recap for those that may not be familiar with Gaia Home. Mm-hmm. What is Gaia Home? And you know, I got a little passion here too. So
I know you do, and I really appreciate your passion, because it's people who have gone through the end of life experience that will really understand what we're trying to do. So we are working to build a community of home-like units and shared gathering spaces for families to move in to receive hospice services, have 24-hour care support, then specialized end-of-life care from caregiving staff. And it's really just a beautiful place for families to gather during that final season of life where they don't have to take on the caregiver role. They can really just be family with their loved one and spend more quality time making lasting memories.
And when I explain it to a lot of people, they're like, but don't we have hospice for that? And yes, and thank God for hospice and what they do. But for some people, there needs to be more care. And trying to keep somebody in a home or a home setting, it's near impossible. And, you know, where I came into this, you and I had this conversation. I went through this with my dad out in Washington State. And you and I were talking, and you're like, I'm on that page. I've been working towards this, and that's where you and I started having some great conversations. Like, well, this and this and this, and what do we need? And you have just run with this ball, and thank you so much, because when this comes to fruition, our community is going to understand where there was a gap and how vitally important this is.
It was. I really appreciate you saying that again too, because it's really it's been your help. It's been all of our volunteers. If you go to our website, thegaiahome.org, click on our leadership tab, you will see
Wachter family,
the Wachter family, the Dosh family, the Russell family. I mean, the Rocksteads. There's just so many people that have been a part of this to make it.
Foundations.
The Tom and Francis Leach Foundation. Yes, I mean, there's just a lot of people that have really gathered around this idea, because yes, there is a huge gap.
It just clicked.
And it's for people who, you know, need that extra support, like you said, where they want a more of a homey option. They don't want to pass in their home. They need more of that specialized care. I was actually on the phone late last night. I got a call from an individual around 8:30, 9 o'clock, and needing help with their father. And they need a place to go where they have the care, because they can't do this quite in their home. And it was just like, okay, we don't have that option quite yet. We're working towards this option. Here are the options now, but soon we will have this option for our community, and especially for Western North Dakota. They say that anywhere between 10 to 30% of people on hospice care any given day could need a place like this. And if you look at all of the people who are on hospice services in Western North Dakota, there's 28 counties. The average daily census is 139. So that's anywhere between 14 to 42 individuals and their families that could really benefit from what we're trying to provide.
Okay, so just a little recap there and where we at right now. You're still in, well, you got a lot of pieces. You got the land, you got the location, you've got a lot of things that we've talked about in the past. You're still in fundraising.
Fundraising mode,
and that means you've got events, and you've got a fun one coming up.
We do. We have our inaugural Buck-a-Bird charity clay shoot. So this is the brainchild of Mr. Jeff Essler, who is on our operations advisory group. And it's a fun charity clay shoot that's a little bit different. People can register to be a regular shooter, or they can be a VIP shooter. And as a VIP shooter, you end up getting a bunch of extra perks. So extra chances to win some great prizes. You get to go through the food line first. You get special attire that only VIP shooters get to wear for the event. And to become a VIP shooter, what we're saying is sign up and then find at least 5 individuals or businesses that will donate $1 or more per bird that you hit. And so there's up to 50 targets.
Okay, we might want to raise a little bit more funds than that.
Agreed. So if you want to...
I have good days out there and I have bad days out there.
And you know what? The funniest part too is we're saying, if you have your shooter sponsors that are sponsoring you and your shooting abilities, they can prepay their donation. And, if you have a lackluster day when it comes to shooting and you only get like 30 targets, we'll kindly thank your sponsors for believing in you and paying their full donation up front. No refunds, people. No refunds.
Okay, so where's this going to be at?
So this is going to be out at the Capital City Sporting Clays with Mark Sandness. He's just been awesome to work with.
Mark's
really
awesome.
So appreciate him. And it'll be on Friday, September 13th. So grateful. Our top sponsor is Bismarck Heating and Bismarck Heating and Air, and they've just been awesome to work with as well. And so just really grateful for the everybody that's coming together to make this event a good time.
So how do people get signed up for this?
So what they need to do is go to thegaiahome.org. Under the events tab, you'll see the Buck-a-Bird, and that's where you go and you can register as an individual shooter, a regular individual shooter, a VIP shooter, or you can sign up as a team as well, team of 4 individuals.
There a cap on, I know Mark does a really good job, in a lot of shooting events get full. Is there a cap on number of teams, number of shooters, or we're just going to make sure that everybody has a good time? We're going to make sure everyone has a good time. This is our first year, and so we're going to test out a little bit of the kinks while we're all having a good time doing it. So, yes. So Friday, September 13th, Buck-a-Bird. Go to thegaiahome.org.
Yes.
You can get signed up there. What are some of you mentioned some prizes?
Yeah,
and stuff.
So we have.
That's the cool thing about this. The community's really pitched in a lot with the Gaia Home and your vision. So. Greatly appreciated in the community, but so the prizes. So we've got an awesome Shields is donating a Benelli USA Montefeltro 12 gauge shotgun, valued at roughly $1,400. So that is the top prize. So if I'm having a bad day shooting around, and then I win the shotgun, so I'm obviously going to shoot better right after that, right?
Oh, obviously. And that's why you want to become a VIP shooter, too. Because if you become a VIP shooter, you get an extra ticket in the drawing. So all VIP shooters, they get 2 tickets, where regular shooters, you just get 1, So VIP, that's where the jam is at.
So cost?
Cost is $100 for an adult to shoot, $50 for youth. We welcome youth to come and shoot as well.
Their team cost?
17 under. Yes, $400 for the team. For the team cost.
And to be a VIP?
To be a VIP, it's $100. So that's what I'm saying. So it's the same cost. You just do a little bit of extra work in finding some shooter sponsors.
Perfect. Go find some sponsors. Going for a great cause. Gaia Home, Kylie Harmon, you've done a great job with this, and I am so happy to see where your vision's gone and where it's going. You can go get signed up for the Buck-a-Bird shoot out at Capital City Sporting Clays, thegaiahome.org. That's GAIA.
Yep, GAIAHOME.org.
Thegaiahome.org. Check it out. Get a team together. Bring some friends. It's going to be a good time. Food, I'm assuming?
Food, yep. We're going to have the big boy food truck out there, so It's going to be a great time.
Nice. Kylie Harmon with the Gaia Home, Buck-a-Bird, September 13th. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Talk of the Town, weekday mornings starting at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app.